Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cloud Wars Live. We're talking about the digital revolution that's been sweeping the world, especially over the last year or so. And we're looking at some of the big players in here who are now helping businesses in every sort of industry find those more precise, higher value, and very innovative industry-specific solutions. Today, we're delighted to have as our guest Mike Sicilia. He's the Executive Vice President of Oracle's industry-specific unit, which they call the industry business units there. Mike, welcome to Cloud Wars Live. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Bob. Great to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah. So, Mike, Oracle's clearly a very big player overall in the application space. I think your part of the business is probably not as well known. So could you tell us a little bit about, what goes on with the Oracle industry business units and how that ties into the more traditional or better known parts of the software side of Oracle?
Sure thing, Bob. So we operate vertical business units that are focused on operating technology, which really are at the front of the house for our customers. So these are applications that very often will touch our customers' customers. For example, billing systems for utilities and communications, point of sale systems for retail, menu management systems and so forth for food and beverage, reservation systems for hospitality customers, all things that our customers' customers interact with on a daily basis. Now, as far as how does that interact with everything else that we do? Well, there are a couple ways. Of course, all of these cloud applications that we offer in our vertical businesses are built on top of Oracle's Generation 2 cloud architecture, built on top of OCI, run and enjoy the same performance, stability, and security that all the rest of our horizontal applications are built on. And then secondly, we can take a lot of our vertical knowledge. We have over 23,000 people working in our vertical business units today that have deep vertical knowledge and apply that to some of our horizontal products like ERP and CX, for example, and actually build core vertical technologies and vertical solutions into those horizontal products, which of course are deeply integrated with the operating technologies that we look after in the business units.
Mike, that's a great overview. I want to come back to that a little bit about that almost like crossover that you've just described here. But in a way, it seems like these industry-specific solutions, you've been doing it at Oracle for a number of years, but it seems like the phenomenon or the demand from the customer side has really boomed in the past 6 months or so. Could you talk about, what's behind that? What's driving this renewed interest?
Yeah, well, you're right. Look, we've been in the vertical businesses for well over a decade at Oracle with deep vertical expertise and deeper operating technologies. We've actually seen cloud uptake even prior to 6 years ago, industry cloud uptake. And I think what's really driving it is you've seen public cloud grow dramatically. And where there are some shortcomings, I think, are really when you start to get out to the edge. When you start to get to technologies where you're touching, again, I'll say it again, touching customers, regulations, operating technologies, and all these things become important. And what we do is package all that up for you, if you will, into a solution, a cloud solution that gives you not just the infrastructure, not just the regulations that are important and security certifications that are important to the infrastructure, but the actual technology, right? The actual operating technology, whether it's a clinical trial system, for example, as well as the integration to all the other horizontal solutions that we deliver, like ERP, CX, and HCM. And when you can put that into a bundle, I think that's really a compelling differentiator and something that folks have, had heightened awareness about in recent months around what does it really mean to define a true industry cloud. I think all of those tenets, all of those things are important for industry clouds.
Yeah, and Mike, could you talk a little bit coming at it from the customer side? When you have conversations with CEOs of some of these customer companies, what do they say? Mike, you got to help me do this. What is that?
Well, so I'll give you an example is the cloud technology in clinical trials, for example. So right now we have 145 trials actively running for COVID-19 therapies or treatments. So, vaccines or things that could help people who are suffering from COVID in our clinical trials software, all of which run in our cloud, all of which run in our clinical trials cloud. Now, what's happening in clinical trials today? Well, actually, COVID has been a huge disruptor to trials. It's trials that have, potentially will take us out of the pandemic, but the way we deliver trials is going to be forever changed. Distributed trials, meaning we don't have to bring as many people into a central hospital location to effectively run a trial. It's becoming a norm. Obviously, you don't want to bring people into the hospital in times of COVID if you don't have to, And then ambulatory monitoring or real world evidence gathering, meaning I want to take and be able to monitor a patient who's part of a trial at home with connected devices, IoT connected devices and so forth. So I don't have to bring them back into the hospital all the time. So there's a challenge, Bob, that brings together, lots of different technologies, IoT, HIPAA compliance, HIPAA endpoint compliance, real world evidence gathering or direct patient interaction, pharmacovigilance, safety monitoring. How do you get all that into a box, if you will, so that I can basically go through this transformation as a pharmaceutical company from a traditional trial method to a distributed trial method? And I think we see, those same, some of them pandemic induced, but those same phenomenon in industries worldwide and across verticals. And I'll give you another perhaps simpler example, but in our food and beverage business, the shift from in-person dining to online, how do you manage delivery? How do you disintermediate delivery partners? How do you do all that in a single box? I think those are the type of things that are driving this transformation for vertical clouds.
Yeah, and Mike, are you sort of coming into contact with new types of customers, sort of different members of the CXO suite than Oracle has traditionally talked to?
Yeah, well, today, so we have 16 million users and 100,000 customers in 120 countries in our vertical clouds. So we have customers large and small. I mean, obviously, that's a very big number of customers, and I'm sure you can deduce from that there are lots of small businesses that are customers there. So I think it's in our construction cloud, for example, which part of which automates payments between general contractors and subcontractors. What's interesting is that about 88% at any given point, about 88% of the users in that cloud are small to medium-sized businesses because they make up the subcontractor community. Now, it's quite possible and quite probable, Bob, that those subcontractors have never been an Oracle customer before. They might not have even heard of Oracle, let alone been an Oracle customer before. But the fact that we deliver a turnkey solution and we automate a common business problem not only makes them an Oracle customer, but it actually makes them an Oracle customer very easily in a very painless, easy way where it's pure click through technology.
Yeah, and then Mike, that's fascinating too. With as you said, that extremely high percentage of small businesses in there, an audience that probably Oracle has not had much exposure to in the past. And then over on the other side, right, Oracle's had a long history with CIOs and CFOs, but now does this bring you more in touch with other LOB leaders and parts of the C-suite?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about what we're doing in verticalizing our CX suite, we announced a product called DX4C, which is digital experience for communications, in which we've taken our core knowledge, if you will, and our core IP from our communications verticals, which we're focused on billing and revenue management, and order orchestration, and actually built that functionality into our CX platform. So it's not a veneer on top of CX. This is actual operating technology that's built into the CX platform. And therefore, when you think about calling on a on a comms customer or dealing with a comms customer, I mean, this is part and parcel to the way they do business, right? This is going to touch the chief revenue officer, the chief operations officer, the chief financial officer, as well as the chief information officer, who's always who always has a seat at these tables. But I think that these are very much automated solutions for common business problems, and therefore the business will get involved in decision making on these solutions.
Yeah, and Mike, that's interesting how you describe that. The complete fusion in some ways of the operating technology there with your horizontal apps. Do you think that's going to become more and more of a trend?
I do. I think it makes complete sense. I think the fact that you have operating technologies that are vertically oriented, as we do, is very compelling. I think the barrier to entry there is high, and I think it's a big competitive differentiator. I think the fact that we can also then verticalize the horizontal technologies really completes the picture. And the fact that you're going to have differences in the way folks look at things even from a core financials perspective across verticals, just because of the way they recognize revenue may be different. It doesn't mean you have to rewrite the entire ERP suite or CX suite. Absolutely not. But it means that you modularize these things in a way such that you're not just putting a veneer on it, but you're actually changing the functionality so that it meets the needs of that vertical industry. And I think that that's what we do and will continue to do very well.
So Mike, as you go down this path, more and more, like I really caught how you've emphasize this thing of the operating technology, right? It is, you're getting into the every facet of how these companies do things. So in this whole new digital world where all of your customers are trying to do new things differently, as you described in the clinical trials approach, is there space in there for Oracle and your customers to do more of like a co-innovation or co-creation than has been done in the past?
Yeah, well, I think the technology really lends itself to that type of a model. And as we build this on top of the OCI generation Cloud 2 services, part and parcel to that are extensions using platform services, platform as a service services. So fact of the matter is, in many of the functionalities that we have today, as well as new businesses that we're building for new verticals that we'll announce in due time, the fact that we can build the APIs in as core tenants in our OCI in our cloud, and there's really no difference between the APIs that the applications use. The applications that we build are really reference implementations of those public APIs. You've got one set of APIs, and therefore interoperability and extensibility becomes entirely possible. And I think that that's a big difference, Bob, from where we were in the on-prem days, where we had customized solutions became the norm to achieve vertical successes. The fact that we can build these things from an API perspective, from an abstraction perspective, into the core fabric of the cloud, because we have that vertical knowledge, because we have that vertical expertise, really lends exactly to the point what you made, which is, I want to do some last mile things, whether it's a customer, whether it's a service delivery partner, whether it's a value-added reseller, they've all got one way in. And, what we don't want to do is get into a situation where you make something so extensible that it also potentially violates all the security of the system. That's the downside of that approach. So I think the way that we're doing it and approaching it's really is the right way to do it.
And so there's that balance, Mike, that you've described all along. You want to be as flexible as possible, but you've also got to be, in some ways, as rigorous as you need to be.
Absolutely. And the best way to do that is, again, you build that into the core fabric of what you do as a cloud service, right? This is not an afterthought. This is part of how we build vertical clouds.
Mike, if you're talking to somebody, right, who's evaluating some different opportunities and they say, we like what you're doing with your software, will I, as your customer, gain some benefit if I run the Oracle vertical applications on, your Oracle OCI Gen 2 infrastructure? Is that going to be a better outcome for me as a business?
There certainly will be benefits and are benefits to doing that. One of them is being able to run on top of the autonomous database, such that you have zero downtime for patching, right? So, anytime there's downtime, whether it's for patching, whether it's in the cloud or it's on-prem, it's still downtime, right? It's time to potentially you take the system offline to do something. The fact that we can handle the database piece of this and then the Linux piece of this on an automated basis, and not have to take downtime to be able to do patching is an example, I think, of something that's a benefit. Now that's, particularly, a sensitive issue when you're talking about some of the sensitive workloads that we have for operating technology, like meter data management for utilities or outage management for utilities, or even clinical trials. These are things that where small amounts of downtime can be a very sensitive topic for our customers. So I think that there certainly are benefits to doing this on top of our highly engineered stack, which includes the autonomous database, autonomous Linux, and really what's the goal? What do we get to? Autonomous applications is that such that these things are self-repairing, self-healing, and self-learning, by pulling in AI and ML and all the other things that we offer on the stack as well.
Mike, that's a great point. I want to come back in a second here and ask you a little bit about that autonomous applications. But first, just a quick word from our sponsor, BMC. BMC wants to know, is your business on its A game? That's when systems are intelligent by learning from markets, where automation is paramount yet effortless, and when technology and people work as one in an enterprise. The A game is your business at its absolute best. BMC calls this the autonomous digital enterprise. Find out more at bmc.com/A game. Mike, so many things in the business that Oracle's in are changing so quickly, and it's been interesting to watch the tech companies, which I think in some ways not so long ago were sort of pushing their business customers, into new areas. But now it seems to have come around a lot where your customers have to move so fast and so dramatically to evolve into the new digital world that they've got to just move at speeds and be able to make good, smart decisions faster than ever before. So in that context, is this notion of somebody having autonomous database, autonomous Linux, is autonomous applications something that people are saying, Mike, this would help me for these reasons?
Yeah, well, I think when they talk about autonomous applications right now, what we really mean is, applications that can learn from the data that they're collecting, right? Applications that can recognize patterns and then help me make better decisions as a result of those learnings, right? So, so-called AI and ML functionality that we have, obviously part and parcel to our stack, the ability to actually promote those and include those as core services in all of our vertical applications. I think is really, it goes a long way towards towards the idea that applications have a degree of autonomous learning around them. Now, the other part of that is the pure stack piece of it, whereas the entire stack is self-healing, self-securing, self-patching, and I think you put both of those things together. And in my view, that's what really makes an application fully autonomous. Is that I don't have to go through an upgrade cycle or for this application to actually add me a lot more value, because it's got the learning features built into it, the deep learning features built into the application, and its output, the more data that it collects, the better off it is, right? And its output, adds more intelligence to my stream every day.
Like, and when you put it in that context, I go back to what you said a couple minutes ago about the lack of downtime. And it's funny. Certainly, downtime's a reality, I guess, some with technology, but your customers more and more. That's got to be almost like becoming a dirty word for them. Like, when does any business in these times have the flexibility to do that? So I think this combination of things, one, the more precise operating technology that you're weaving into these applications, the fact that it can work with the horizontal apps, and the fact that there are solutions possible that really minimize this notion of downtime, that seems to be something that every company has to be interested in now.
Yeah, I think all companies are interested. I think governments as well. And I'll give you another example. We built the vaccine safety post-injection monitoring system for the United States government, and called vSafe. And well, there's an application that you really don't want to have any downtime in, right? As we're looking at real world evidence gathering, particularly with all the sensitivities right now among the vaccines, and really thrilled that we made the decision to build that right on top of the Oracle stack, and as such have seen the benefits of tremendous uptime and adding value, we think to the world and to the government. So I think it's businesses, I think it's governments, I think this whole idea of real time, real world data and real-time decision making around that. I don't think there's a vertical industry, to your point, Bob, that doesn't have some interest in some mission critical business process that has to fit that bill. And sure, we're ready to explore those discussions for sure.
Yeah, Mike. I wanted to ask sort of a broader question here. There have been, a couple of tech companies have been saying now industry-specific applications are great, but also now it's not just sort of within a company, but talking about across industries, right? Are there some of these capabilities that you've got that can almost extend up to become industry networks in some way, as well as within a particular company?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So industry ecosystems, cross industry ecosystems, and how does that sort of all work in this vertical cloud world? Well, it's not uncommon that for example, our communications customers, for example, are also retailers. They also operate retail stores. So we have operating technologies that we would position to the retail team, and to the core network team, and to the team that does the billing and orchestration. And really, you've got three different buyers, if you will, inside the organization, three different lines of business, but all have the folks in the retail organization consider themselves to be retailers. The folks in the network organization, of course, consider themselves to be operators, and the folks on the billing side consider them to be customer facing, customer success type people, or revenue generation folks. So I think. And then you take it, to your point, to the industry in general, and there may be more vendors than Oracle involved in that piece as well. So certainly interoperability among clouds. As you know, we announced partnerships with Microsoft and for exactly these type of scenarios. Interoperability among clouds, both at the horizontal technical level and the vertical level, is something that we're quite used to our customers implementing.
Yeah, and then Mike, the some of the numbers that your team had shared about the number of customers you've got there. And you mentioned it right in your opening remark. I mean, that's a lot of companies, right? And even if, as you said, some are SMBs, 100,000 customers, 16 million users. Is that something that you might have expected, within the last year or two, that type of growth?
Oh yes, yeah. I'm not terribly surprised by that. It's really been, as I mentioned, we've been in the vertical operating business for a very long time, and I think those numbers of users we've been amassing for years. And of course, what happens is when you move them to the cloud, it's much easier to count them, right? It's more difficult to count them when you distribute the software out and somebody runs it, and you really can't see the metrics or the heuristics around it. So it's pleasantly surprising, but not shocking. That's not shocking that we're serving that many people are touching Oracle vertical technology on a daily basis.
And Mike, can you give an idea, right? As you've said, for 10 years, Oracle has been in this type of business. What's sort of the status report on how things are going between porting over the things you've had on premise over to have a full cloud suite with these industry specific apps?
Yeah. So in terms of that, so our cloud business today is bigger than our traditional license business, much bigger than our traditional license business, and I think that's probably one of the indicators. And I think you're also seeing now business vertical industries that were slower to move, financial services being one, communications being one, really slower to move. And even a couple of years ago, probably would say, Bob, and might have even told you, hey, we're not going to move some of our core technologies to the cloud. We're just never going to do that. We don't see that as a play. Well, those discussions have changed pretty dramatically. And I would say that, certainly the pandemic maybe has fueled some of those discussions, as, in terms of that. So, and that's, this idea of, being connected all the time everywhere is even greater than it certainly was before. But I think you're seeing that, so our business is much bigger, and even the big businesses, even the really big vertical businesses where there's a lot of vertical spend on-prem, you're seeing that shift to the cloud in big ways. And again, not just for our true vertical applications, but also for our core applications on the horizontal basis like ERP, CX, and HCM as well.
Yeah, Mike, any customers that you can cite? Talk a little bit about an example of some companies that have really gone pretty deep with your vertical apps.
Yeah, well, I think on the vertical app side right now, one of the more compelling pieces right now is been around the COVID-19 reaction. So we've built and donated solutions, SaaS solutions, for true vertical solutions, in which we took all of our IP from our existing health sciences and our know-how, and really built some rapid solutions for our customers to deploy that. So governments around the world, including the United States, and governments throughout Africa are depending upon that. In comms, most of the major telcos, in some case have moved or are moving workloads from on-prem, particularly for billing and orchestration, to the cloud. In construction, Turner Construction, which is one of the biggest construction firms in the world, have been using our construction management clouds for payment, for automating payment solutions for quite some time, and quite happy with that. In hospitality, we've got customers like Wyndham and Marriott. In retail, Prada and Gap. So really a marquee list of very large customers. And I could go through lots of big names. I think though there are so many small customers in there too. And when I think about that reach, and I think about the importance of that, in vertical industries, because those small customers are often suppliers or subcontractors to the large customers too. So if you really want true vertical clouds, I think you've got to get both. And I'm just as happy with the sheer number of small customers that we have as well as I am with the major brands that I routed off there.
Now that's a nice balance, Mike, as you've described it. It's impressive. Can I ask as a final thought here, Mike? As you look out, you've been doing this for a while, you've been leading the business for a couple of years. Where do you see this headed?
Yeah, I think we'll very quickly announce more businesses, more vertical business units at Oracle, entirely cloud focused. We think there are lots of other vertical industries other than the ones that we have dedicated businesses for today that are ripe for cloud transformation. So I think where does it head? We continue to add more verticals. We continue to put more of our vertical horsepower into our horizontal applications as well, and tailor them for vertical needs.
Well, great, Mike. Thanks so much for being with us. It's been fun to hear how Oracle's doing in this space. Again, something that I think Oracle may be better known for other things, but it sounds like you're making some pretty good progress here.
Thanks very much for having me, Bob. I really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And folks, all of you, thanks for being with us here at Cloud Wars Live. clearly, this digital revolution, it's got a lot of facets. One of them is in this industry specific nature. So we hope you'll come back next time. We've got some more coverage coming up, and we hope it's a great day for everybody out there. Cheers.